Good morning, friends. This is Pastor Lorri joining you from First UMC in Kirksville, and it is so good to spend this time with you this morning on this final Friday in September. I'm coming to you this morning from our sanctuary here at the church, and I'm here because I've been thinking about our worship series, where we've been looking at the prophecies in Jeremiah, and especially the way that we are like clay or the pottery vessels, and that God is like the potter. And so, as I'm here with you this morning, I have some show and tell with me today. This is a crock that some of you eagle eyes may notice is the one that often sits on the shelf behind me in my dining room when I film from my dining room table. Now, this simple little crock has an important story behind it in my life from a time where I felt very broken, very much like shards of pottery. It was a time about 20 years ago where we had been trying to start a family, and I had had one miscarriage after the next. Now, you may have heard me tell this story here on these videos before, but I'm going to share it again today. And it was right before Christmas time, and a Christmas present arrived in the mail. And it was this beautiful crock. But unfortunately, the journey had not been kind to it. And when I opened the box, the bowl had just broken into shards, almost too many to count. Some were the tiniest little shards, others were large. And I just sat there and I wept. Because in that moment, as I opened that box, this was a visual representation of the way I felt that all my hopes and dreams and plans felt shattered, just like this bowl. Now, I certainly couldn't fix all of my own hopes and dreams and plans, but I could be very stubborn and lay out newspapers on my kitchen table and get a bottle of glue and begin to painstakingly try to glue this crock back together. And so that's what I did over that Christmas break. And you can see the evidence in this crock. You can see the places where it was broken and had been glued back together. No one will ever mistake it for a pristine bowl, one that's not been used, one that does not have a history, one that has not been on a journey. But what I discovered was, though it no longer would be able to be used for its original purpose, I wouldn't be able to mix cookies in it or pour in pasta with sauce or any of the other things that we sometimes use a crock like that for. It was beautiful to hold our cloth napkins. When we moved here, we had a shelf right behind our table that was the perfect spot to keep these napkins so that they were within easy reach of the table, so that they would use them frequently. This crock holds napkins, some of them that are just hanging on by the barest thread. They have been through the wash so many times and been through so many years. It's become a part of our everyday use. And so as we moved into this series on pottery, and we were collecting some different types of pots and pottery to put up here on the altar, we thought of this pot. And I love the imagery, right? Because this is a broken, shattered vessel. And in these weeks, it has had holy purpose. It holds our bread during communion. Holy ground happens when we least expect it sometimes. We sing that song often at the end of a worship service, that we are standing on holy ground. And while sometimes that holy ground is here in a church sanctuary, so often holy ground happens in the middle of our everyday lives, in the middle of the other times when we're least expecting it, when we realize that, kind of like in this window behind me, Jesus is just out of sight. That sometimes in the middle of our daily lives, It's like Jesus is just out of sight there as well. But that it's sacred space, it's holy ground in the middle of whatever brokenness, whatever life-shattering circumstances are coming, that God, as this amazing potter, will come and bring us back together again. And sometimes it's like a lump of moldable clay that hasn't been fired and will be brought back down to the beginning and shaped all over again. And sometimes it's like these shards, and our lives will be painstakingly glued back together for a new purpose, for something beautiful. I'll admit that when I glued this back together, I wept through much of it. The tears flowed as freely as the glue did. And that was an important part of my grieving process, as I grieved for all that I thought might never be. Now, turns out there were other plans ahead that I couldn't have known then. But at that time, that grief, those tears, they were healing. And so I think of that when I see this crock, and it no longer brings me great sadness. Instead, it brings hope. It's a reminder that when life feels like it is being shattered, and let's be honest, that does often happen again and again throughout our lives. There's a diagnosis that comes in, there's a relationship that gets broken, there's something that happens that just takes things apart from what they normally are, and we find ourselves feeling once again like these shards of a bowl. Well, God is still at work. God is still in the midst in this holy ground. And I want to leave you today with a prayer, a blessing we did this book last Lent by Kate Bowler, and this is a blessing for becoming real, because that's what's happened to this crock, right? It became real. It shows the dings of life. And that's what happens with us as well. We have scars, we have marks, we have ones external and internal that show our journeys and that show how God has been at work in the middle of it. Blessed are we who are becoming, who have lived so long in this strange state we call time that it shows. We are changing, and that's how we know we are alive. Blessed are you who see the evidence of your own becoming, the places where you are worn from so much loving, the laugh lines from jokes that made your belly ache, crow's feet from squinting to see the stars, stretch marks from growing babies, building muscle, enjoying delicious meals, and yes, the places that hurt, that are still visibly wounded and sore, that change how you move or how you live. Blessed are you, seeing all of this as evidence of loss, yes, but also of life, because what is real is now showing through. Blessed are you who do not despise your realness. It may hurt. You may not recognize yourself in the mirror, but this is what we hoped for, right? To live and to love, to be loved, to have our experiences show on our faces and in ourselves. This is the real life of Jesus in us, being made visible as all our seams and scars and glued together shards show. So friends, go in peace. Know that you are held in the loving hands of our Creator, held and made whole. Take care, friends, and I'll see you next week.